Real quick, before we get into the Season 4 recap, if you need a Season 3 recap, just hit the tab in the corner. If you need a complete Seasons 1 through 3 recap, there'll be another tab shortly. Just wait for that one. Now, Season 4 is going to kick off with the merger of Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang Karate. Although, it's clear they didn't really discuss things. Problem is, they have two different ideologies, with Miyagi-Do going defense and Eagle Fang going offense. But let's just say the relationship between Daniel and Johnny is rocky at first. It's a pretty rough first day. When Daniel gets home, he thinks maybe he can relax there. Wrong. Amanda has put in a new alarm system ever since the fight, but it's actually put her more on edge. He tries to make her feel better by just saying, I know this is less than ideal, and she looks at him and says, a boy was thrown through our window. I mean, if you would have told me a year ago that our family's safety depended on winning a karate tournament, I would have thought you were joking. Yet, here we are. He tells her, if Johnny and I can just work together, it gives us a great shot of ending all this. But Daniel has to admit that it's early, but so far they haven't been really able to work together. Over with Johnny that night, dinner's a little bit less stressful. He has dinner with Carmen, her mom, and Miguel. Carmen mentions to Miguel how she's happy that he's going out with Sam again. And then Miguel, being a horrible wingman, says, yeah, I'm not the only one getting back together with my ex. Johnny went on a date with his. It leads for a really uncomfortable conversation as they're doing dishes between Carmen and Johnny, where she says, I think it's better that we don't rush into anything. Now, one person noticeably absent from practice that day was Robbie. Robbie heads back to Cobra Kai to pick up his things, and he's caught by John Kreese, who tells him, you can still practice with us. But Robbie reminds him, I never actually joined the team. The master manipulator of John Kreese, though, goes to work, stroking Robbie's ego and telling him that he's actually more talented than his dad. He just needs the right training. Kreese leaves Robbie and he starts working out when Tori shows up. She starts ripping him for not being involved in the fight, and he says, what were you thinking? You'd break into their house, hurt Sam, and everything would be sunshine and roses? You're lucky they didn't call the cops. Tori shoots back, well, at least I'm not straddling the fence, because girls like Sam LaRusso think the world revolves around them. I mean, makes sense. All she has to do is make a puppy dog face and say please, and she gets whatever she wants. I mean, even after she dropped you, you're still wrapped right around her finger. He tells her that's not true, but she doesn't believe it. She then tells him, if you're going to stay on defense, this is not the right dojo for you. The next day, Miyagi-Do Eagle Fang combo meet again to start training for the All Valley. And this time they talked about things. They're basically going to split up. Eagle Fang outside, Miyagi-Do inside. Although, after a few minutes, it's obvious that doesn't work. As both Johnny and Daniel are outside trying to be cordial to each other, Hawk walks inside the dojo to get some water. Now, Hawk's supposed to be a part of Eagle Fang, but Hawk hasn't been accepted by anybody since he returned. He's getting his ass kicked in practice, and the Miyagi-Do people don't want anything to do with him because he kicked the crap out of him. He walks out of the dojo after getting chastised by some of the Miyagi-Do people, and he sees Daniel and says, Mr. LaRusso, I don't know where I fit in here. And he's catching Daniel right after arguing with Johnny. So Daniel snaps at him, what did you expect? You burned bridges with everybody here. And instead of arguing with him, Hawk just takes off. So day 2 actually went worse than day 1. As they're walking home, Johnny tells Miguel, there's just too much history between us. It's not going to work. Miguel tries to tell Johnny about Rocky 3. Rocky and Apollo working together to defeat Clubber Lang. But in order for those two to work together, somebody had to reach out. Somebody had to be the bigger man. So he implores Johnny to be that bigger guy. Reach out to Daniel, apologize. But he wasn't the only one pitching a sensei, because Sam did the exact same thing with her dad. But her dad and Johnny isn't the only relationship she wants to mend. She finds Robbie skateboarding and she apologizes for everything that happened, telling him that she still cares about him. She asks him to come back to the dojo, telling him how it would bring everybody together. But Robbie looks at her and says, I know this is going to be difficult for you, but for the first time in your life, you're not going to get what you want. And then he skates off. So she's 0 for 1. But she's 1 for 1 when Daniel shows up at Johnny's house and he's the first one to apologize. But even their apologies are painful. It's not long before the two are fighting and they just realize this isn't working. We tried, but we got to end it. We'll tell the kids tomorrow. When they show up the next day, they're shocked to find Hawk taking a sledgehammer to the fence. They ask him what he's doing, and Hawk decided that he would bring some unity to the group and literally build a bridge. Or, in this case, an Okinawan sparring deck. He saw a picture in the dojo from Mr. Miyagi's grandfather, so he decided that he would build one outside. The dimensions work out, and this changes Johnny and Daniel's thoughts of ending things. Now, after talking with Sam, Robbie went back to the dojo, but he went back to Cobra Kai. And when the remaining students, basically it's Tori, Kyler, and a couple of other no-names, show up, they're not too happy. They get even more pissed off when Robbie says, I'm going to lead class today. They start criticizing him, but he says, okay, I'll tell you what, if you can land one punch on me, I'll leave. And Robbie takes every single one of them out, including Tori. He tries to lend a hand to Tori to pick her up, and that's when she kicks him in the face. And he says, okay, a deal's a deal. I'll leave. But she says, no, come back. He then gets everybody in line and starts telling them that their enemies have bonded together to take them out. The deck is stacked against them, but luckily, they have the playbook. He is going to teach Cobra Kai Miyagi-Do karate. John Kreese then walks in and he hands over the class. And John Kreese was busy that day. He made a call to his old pal Terry Silver, but when Terry picked up the phone, he immediately hung up. Just like everybody else, he wants nothing to do with John Kreese. He's moved on. So Kreese went and tracked him down. And Terry Silver is now Terrence Silver, living a pretty lavish lifestyle. Very different. Terry tries to tell him to get lost, but when Terry's new girlfriend Cheyenne ends up seeing John, she invites him into the party she's having for her new app that's launching. After chit-chatting with Terry's new group of friends, it becomes obvious to John just how much Terry has changed. He finally is able to get Terry alone, and he starts pitching Terry on the whole new generation of Cobra Kai that needs his help. He tells him how Johnny and Daniel have teamed up and he needs a partner. But Terry says no. He tells Kreese, back in the 80s, I thought I could conquer the world. In reality, I was so hopped up on coke and revenge that I tortured a teenager. I worked hard to build my life back up. I'm not going back. Right before he leaves, Kreese tells Terry, going off into the sunset, that might work for you, but I still have some fight left in me. And that statement sits with Terry, to where when Cheyenne asks him to go grab a bottle of wine, he does, but he sees another bottle lying there, and he spin kicks it. So, yeah, he still got it. In episode 2, when Daniel heads to the dojo that day, he finds Johnny already there, but the fight quickly starts. Daniel tells Johnny, it looks like our students want us to work together, so we gotta find some level of respect here. Johnny says respect is a two-way street. So they agree to try and see the other side. Daniel is going to teach Johnny Miyagi-Do, and Johnny is going to teach Daniel Eagle Fang Karate. Miyagi-Do is going to go first. Johnny starts painting a wall, but he gets bored with it real easily. Doesn't take long before he quits, and he tells Daniel, defense is boring. Offense is always going to be more badass. But Daniel points out, while Miyagi-Do might seem boring, it saved him a few times. And when Johnny thinks about it, he's right. Mr. Miyagi's boring karate did come up clutch more than once in his life. So he walks back over, picks up the paintbrush, and continues to go back and forth. Waxing on, waxing off, trying to find balance. Johnny gives it his best effort, but at the end of the day, he still doesn't really buy in. And he tells Daniel, tomorrow, you're going to learn Eagle Fang Karate. Now, while Daniel was teaching Johnny a lesson, Amanda was trying to teach Tori a lesson. She actually found out where Tori worked and went and visited her, telling her to stay away from Sam. Conversation gets pretty contentious. Tori's boss actually comes over, and when Tori snaps at one of the customers, she gets fired. It wasn't what Amanda was setting out to do, but she's not crying about it. After work, Tori ends up going to the dojo where Robbie is teaching them Miyagi-Do karate, but Tori has an edge about her, more so than usual. Kreese notices and pulls her in the office and says, what's going on with you? Is it something with your mom? And she tells him, I lost my job. He gets the full story from Tori, but does tell her, you can't sit here and feel sorry for yourself. But just because Kreese told Tori not to feel bad for herself doesn't mean he's not going to stick up for her. He tracks down Amanda in a Whole Foods, right between the cheese and the apples. She tells Kreese, I know about the deal you made with my husband and Johnny, but I'm telling you right now, I will make sure you lose that tournament. And he asks her, is that why you're sabotaging my students? You know, I respect you defending your daughter. I think that's what all mothers should do, but unfortunately, Tori doesn't have that luxury. Tori has to pay the bills and put food on the table. Amanda had no idea about this and immediately feels really bad about what happened. She tries to fix it by buying Tori groceries and dropping them off on her front step. But as she's at LaRusso Auto, Tori busts in with the bag of groceries, throws them on the ground, and says, you think this makes up for it? I don't need your sympathy. I feed my family. Amanda says, Tori, I just want all this to be over. And Tori says, don't worry. It will be. When I humiliate your daughter at the All Valley in front of everybody. Thanks for lighting a fire under me. I needed that. Then she storms out. And speaking of the All Valley, the former champ, Daniel LaRusso, well, it's his turn to learn a different style. This time it's the man's karate, Eagle Fang. They go to an abandoned warehouse, and Johnny works Daniel to the bone. Later that night, Johnny takes him to a hockey game and he figures he's just hanging out, guys being dudes. But no, Johnny's showing him the physicality of the sport. He then picks a fight on Daniel's behalf with the hockey team. And when it comes time to actually throw down, Johnny's nowhere to be found. It forces Daniel to actually strike first, and he wipes the floor with these guys. But most of the episode has to do with a new kid in town. His name's Kenny. He's having to join the middle school during the year, which is never easy. And the first impression he gives the other kids isn't a great one. When the bus rolls up, he's dancing like a fool, and all the kids are laughing at him. He does shine, however, in gym class, but it's at the expense of Anthony LaRusso. And Anthony's kind of fallen in with the bullies a little bit. Anthony only stops with the threats when his crush, a girl named Leah, comes up, tells Anthony, give the new kid a break, and then compliments Kenny on his shirt. The shirt's for a video game. So Anthony backs off, but Kenny did not have the best first day. He gets a phone call from his dad, who is serving in the army in Saudi Arabia, asking about how the first day went. Kenny doesn't tell him how bad it went, but you can tell his mood is down. His dad says to him, your mom needs you now. She's had a tough time after everything that happened to your brother, and his brother is in juvenile detention. Before his dad hangs up, he reminds Kenny that he's the man of the house now, and then he tells him he loves him. That night, Kenny hops on his favorite game, Dungeon Lord, starts playing it, when he gets a friend request from Leah. He's pumped, because Leah's adorable, and they play all night. She starts asking him questions, he's answering them. It seems like he's forming a little bit of a crush, but he's completely unaware that it's not Leah on the other side. It's Anthony and his little douche crew. When they ask Kenny what he likes to do for fun and he reveals that he does cosplay, they convince Kenny the next night to show up in the park dressed as this squirrel professor character. Which, by the way, is worth mentioning, Anthony is completely aware of who all these characters are. He's as big of a nerd as any of them, although he doesn't want to show it. So that night, Kenny heads out to the park, thinking that he's going to meet with Leah, when Anthony and his buddies pop out from behind a bush and start filming him, laughing at him at his expense. When he sees that Anthony's filming him, he knocks his phone out of his hand and it breaks. And that's when Anthony and his friends grab him. They want Anthony to punch him in the face, but Anthony doesn't want to do it. They all think that Anthony is this karate whiz because of his dad, but in reality, he doesn't know how to do karate. He never got into it. He's just never dispelled that myth. Before Anthony actually has to hit Kenny, Kenny is able to squirm his way out and run away. Kenny's first 2 days have been rough. He needs some guidance, so he goes and visits his brother. And his brother, it turns out, is Sean, a kid that Robbie was enemies with at first, but eventually became friends with. And Sean tells Kenny, go visit Robbie Keene. He'll help you out. And in episode 3, Kenny seeks out Robbie. He finds him in Cobra Kai, interrupting a lesson, and introduces himself to Robbie. Robbie had no idea Sean had a brother, and asks if Sean's out, and Kenny says, no, that's actually why I'm here. These kids keep hassling me, and one of them knows karate, apparently, so I'm here to defend myself. Robbie vouches for Kenny just based on Sean, and Kreese says, you're going to have to prove you're worthy of Cobra Kai. And Kenny fails that test. He's matched up against Kyler, and every time Kyler runs at him, Kenny just runs away. Just like in grade school, everybody's laughing at Kenny. Kreese tells Kenny, we don't have time for losers or cowards. And Kenny just goes home. Kenny, though, forgets his book bag, and Robbie grabs it. Kenny's mom wrote his address on one of the book bag straps, so it's not hard for Robbie to find out where he lives. He goes to deliver the book bag, and then Robbie asks about the situation with Sean. Kenny, though, blames himself because Kenny had caught one of Sean's friends stealing from their parents, and he was about to tell on him. The kids started hassling Kenny, and Sean beat the crap out of him. Went a little bit too far, though, and it got Sean in juvie. The fact that Sean was just sticking up for his brother is the whole reason why he's not at home, and Kenny lives with that. Kenny tells Robbie, with him gone, I've got no one. And Robbie explains that with the All Valley coming up, he just doesn't have the time. But when Kenny's phone dings, he looks down and sees a video of kids making fun of him again. Robbie demands to see the phone, and it's a video of kids who put a bunch of milk in his locker. So Robbie knows this kid really needs him. He decides to go in the backyard and show him a few moves. Problem is, the kid is terrified. Anytime somebody goes at him, he just backs up. He says to Robbie, all I can do is run. So Robbie says, let's use that to your advantage. But instead of running away, run at your opponent. He then tells Kenny, swing by the dojo tomorrow. Let's see if you can try out again. Well, while Robbie was visiting Kenny, Kreese was getting a visitor from Terry Silver. Terry starts yelling at Kreese for bringing up the past. And Kreese starts yelling at Terry for trying to be something he's not. Terry says to Kreese, "This isn't my fight." And Kreese says, "If you actually believe that, you wouldn't be standing here." And while Terry says he doesn't, Kreese doesn't believe him. He says to Terry, there's still time to finish what we started. And when Terry goes home that night, he thinks about the past, thinks about his relationship with Kreese, thinks about the good times. And that's when he puts his hair back in the ponytail. Terrence Silver is back to being Terry Silver. The next day, Kenny does, in fact, stop by the dojo. Robbie is able to convince Kreese to give him one more shot, and it's just like the last time. Kyler runs at him, he runs away. But he thinks about what Robbie said. He ends up sucker punching Kyler. And that aggression ends up getting him a spot on Cobra Kai. And then finally, over with Miyagi-Do Eagle Fang Karate. Ever since seeing how the other half lives, Johnny and Daniel have been getting along really well. So much so that Johnny, Carmen, and Miguel head over to have dinner with Daniel, Amanda, and Sam. At first, they start talking about Sam's future going to college, and then it segues into Miguel. Miguel's grades are great, and he says how he wants to go to Stanford, but Carmen points out that Stanford is really expensive, and a place like Santa Monica College would be more affordable. And Miguel kind of gets a little bit embarrassed about the fact that his mom admitted money might keep him from Stanford, not the grades. The next day, the lesson is switched. Since it works so well for the senseis, they're going to try it with the students. Miyagi-Do kids are going to go with Johnny, Eagle Fang kids are going to go with Daniel. And Daniel has the Eagle Fang kids try to catch koi with their bare hands. It's a lesson in patience, and they fail miserably. After practice, Miguel gets a phone call from his mom that he's not going to be able to get picked up because they're having car trouble. Daniel overhears the conversation and tells him, "Bring in the car to my place. I'll fix it for you." He takes a look at it and realizes it just needs a new serpentine belt. But he's going to make Miguel fix it. Miguel doesn't know anything about cars, but Daniel says, "Neither did I at your age. But I learned. And look at me now. I've got billboards. Maybe one day you'll have a billboard." Miguel tells him, "I don't know if they make billboards for people that go to community college." And that's when Daniel reveals that he didn't even go to college. He explains how his mother had saved up money for him to go, but he blew it on a trip to Japan. He then took the rest of the money and bought a failed bonsai business. He says to Miguel, "Your path is still being written, and you have a good head on your shoulders, so I know you can do it." Johnny, meanwhile, takes the kids to an abandoned warehouse and wants them to jump off a roof, which Sam is not willing to do. None of the kids will do it. Sam tells Johnny, "We came here with an open mind, but this is crazy." And when Johnny says, "I know what I'm doing," Sam asks, "Do you? Because your track record says otherwise." He brings up the fact that it was her and her friends who wrecked his Firebird, and it was her who showed up at his door drunk, hiding from her dad. She gets super defensive and yells, "Yeah, well, I'm a stupid teenager making mistakes. You're a 50-something-year-old man who lives alone, drinks all day, and clearly hasn't figured out his own life." And Johnny says, "I figured out one thing for sure. If I did everything my parents wanted me to do, I'd be wearing a suit and tie and just waiting for the clock to hit 5. Now I get to do what I love every day. So if you want to sit in the back seat your entire life, like you were in that car when you wrecked my Firebird, then go ahead." It gets time to go for the day, and Johnny just looks at Sam and says, "Well, I guess you got what you wanted, right?" And that's when Sam decides to get out behind the back seat. She runs full speed off that rooftop and onto the building below, and everybody jumps up in excitement. This move by Sam inspires Johnny, and that night he decides that he himself will get from behind the back seat. He goes and knocks on Carmen's door. He says, "I know you want to take things slow," and she cuts him off and says, "Maybe we should talk about this later." But Johnny's not waiting till later. He's doing it right then and there. And then he sees why she wanted to wait till later. In the apartment is her mother, and her mother's friends. Johnny, though, not deterred. He says to Carmen, "I don't care. I'm not afraid to take the leap with you. There's a lot to figure out, but let's figure it out together." Carmen agrees, and now it looks like they're dating. The next day, the lessons between Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang continue with the other sensei. Miguel is actually able to catch a koi with his bare hand. He's pumped. Because of this, Daniel gives him a headband. Look, there's probably a technical name for this that I'm screwing up and everybody will rip me for, but to just some Joe Schmo, it looks like a bandana. But Johnny shows up and sees this quasi-ceremony. He's not too happy. Episode 4 picks up right where Episode 3 left off, and Johnny is getting a little bit jealous of the relationship between Daniel and Miguel. Even as he's teaching the Miyagi-Do kids, he keeps peeking over his shoulder to see what Miguel and Daniel are doing. As the classes end, Johnny asks Miguel, "Hey, you want to come over and grab some food?" But Miguel says, I wish I could, man, but I'm going back with Mr. LaRusso. We're finishing up my mom's car. And while Miguel works on his mom's car, Johnny works on his mom's other car. Or at least he tries. Something I can commiserate to. He apologizes to a woman in bed for lack of performance. He just can't get the Miguel and Daniel relationship out of his head. Carmen, though, changes the conversation because she doesn't like the fact that they're sneaking around behind Miguel's back. Johnny's worried, though, that this could make things worse if Miguel found out. Carmen reminds him that Miguel loves him. As Johnny and Carmen discuss how they're going to tell Miguel or when they're going to tell Miguel, Miguel is at the shop with Daniel, realizing just how much he and Daniel have in common. When it comes time to leave, Daniel decides to be the one to give Miguel his first ever driving lesson. They're heading to a birthday party to meet up with Sam and Amanda. And that birthday party is the last place Sam wants to be. That is, until she sees who else is there. Tori got a new job, and it's working kids' birthday parties as a mermaid. And Sam is in her glory. She spends most of the birthday giving Tori crap at her job. Finally gets to the point where Tori convinces all the kids to throw a glitter bomb on Sam. When Miguel and Daniel finally do show up, Sam sticks the knife in a little bit more and makes out with Miguel right in front of Tori. That's the final straw. Tori grabs her stuff, she heads out the back, and she is out of there. But she's stopped by Amanda, who sees it. Amanda apologizes for Sam and says that she will talk to her about what she did, but also says, you can't fault Sam for having issues with you after what you did. When Amanda brings up the situation with Tori's mom, Tori gets super defensive. Amanda backs off, but before she goes back in the party, she tells Tori, no one can help you if you don't let them. Now back at the Cobra Kai dojo, Robbie stayed a little bit extra to help out Kenny. Kenny had an issue the previous day when the middle school toured the high school. Kenny was wearing his Cobra Kai stuff, having no idea that there's a legitimate turf war going on. So when he went to the bathroom, he was approached by Bert and Nate. Then Hawk came in and told Kenny, you should probably get out of Cobra Kai while you still can. Kenny explained all of this to Robbie, and Robbie knows immediately who it is. But when Terry Silver, who has returned in the sensei role, overhears Robbie teaching Kenny about Miyagi-Do, he steps in. In an effort to assert his dominance, he challenges Robbie to a fight that he wins. When Terry picks up Robbie, he tells him, you've learned to channel your anger, but you're afraid. Robbie shoots back, I'm not afraid of anything. And Terry asks him, are you lying to me or yourself? If you want to be a champion, you need to dig out that fear and face it, whatever it is. Because if you don't, it's going to hold you back forever. Robbie then gets dressed and heads over to his dad's place because he needs to talk to his dad about what Hawk did to Kenny. Robbie says if Hawk and them don't stop, they're going to have to face the consequences. And Johnny feels like Kreese has put Robbie up to something, but Robbie says no, he hasn't. I'm just trying to help this kid out, but if your kids don't knock it off, I'll do what I have to. Johnny then tells Robbie how Kreese is brainwashing him, and Robbie says, that's the difference between me and you. You put all of your trust in Kreese, and I don't trust anybody anymore. I'm just using Cobra Kai to get what I want. He then takes Terry's advice, facing his fear. And apparently his fear is that he ends up like his dad. So he looks Johnny in the eye and says, I'm not going to end up like you, because I'm better than you. It's a really nice father-son moment. Johnny heads back into his apartment and he starts making dinner. He planned on having dinner with Miguel. A little bit of a surprise. He waits at the table for Miguel to get home and catches him going back into his house. But when he brings up the food, Miguel tells Johnny that he had an early dinner with the LaRussos. So unfortunately, he's going to have to take a rain check. He also brings up the fact that Daniel gave him his first driving lesson, and you can tell that that really hurts Johnny. Miguel then heads into his house because he's got a date that night. But he's not the only one. All of the kids are going to a drive-in movie to watch Bloodsport. That includes the Cobra Kai kids. Kenny, however, is being hazed pretty good by Kyler. Robbie actually has to tell him, hey, hazing's a good thing. It means you're being accepted. But as Kenny is coming back with this large order of food, he gets caught once again by Eli, Nate, and Bert. This time, however, Robbie sees it. He walks up to defend his buddy. The Miyagi-Do Eagle Fang kids end up walking up to defend Hawk. You got a good old-fashioned stare down going on, and Miguel says to him, meet us in the park in a half an hour. And the Cobra Kai kids do. They head to the park, but the Eagle Fang Miyagi-Do kids don't. They're waiting in a car, because Miguel was well aware when he made this invitation that the sprinkler system was going to go off, and it soaks the Cobra Kai kids. The next day, it is all Cobra Kai can talk about, how they're going to get revenge. But it's not just them. Kreese wants to strike back. Terry, however, says, I agreed to come back to do what we originally set out to do. Turn kids into winners. If we're just going to rehash the past, then history is just going to repeat itself. But it's not like Terry is willing to just sit back and do nothing. So Terry and Kreese head on over to Miyagi-Do. They interrupt an argument between Johnny and Daniel, who have different ideologies about how the previous night went down. Johnny thinking it was cowardice, and Daniel thinking it was the smart play. But they both shut up when Kreese and Silver show up. Daniel especially is shocked to see Terry Silver back in the valley. In episode 5, Daniel is extremely confrontational with Terry. It's understandable. Terry gets it. He tells Daniel, I'm not that guy anymore. As all of the Miyagi-Do Eagle Fang kids watch on from afar, Daniel kind of threatens them. Terry, being very rational, says, that's fine. Just know, we're going to still hold our students to a moratorium on fighting before the tournament. We hope you guys will do the same. And Kreese doesn't even let them answer. He just reminds them about the deal that if Cobra Kai wins the valley, Johnny and Daniel are done teaching. Right before Kreese leaves, he goes back into manipulation mode, telling Johnny that he's playing second fiddle to Daniel. And when Johnny says that's not the case, Kreese points out it's his name on the dojo. Kreese and Silver head back to Cobra Kai and let the kids know. They just got back from Miyagi-Do Eagle Fang, and they are not to fight before the tournament. Tori especially is pissed off about this because she feels like that they get to be humiliated and can't even answer back. But Terry brings up, there is a time and a place for everything. So if your enemies do something like laugh at you or mess with you, store that anger because you're going to need it when the time comes. While Robbie hears what Silver said, he has an idea on how they can get some payback. Kreese also heard Terry, loud and clear, and he doesn't like what he heard. He takes him out to dinner and says, I want to make sure we're on the same page here. Cobra Kai never backs down from a fight, tournament or no tournament, and we always strike first. Terry points out, though, that Kreese already did strike first. He stole Robbie. Stealing a guy's kid? That's a pretty big strike. Silver warns Kreese, you've got all of these kids wrapped up in your drama, and if you don't fix it, it's going to take down Cobra Kai. Kreese, however, reassures Silver that he's got it under control, but Silver says, from where I'm sitting, it's not what it looks like. Let's just focus on taking down Johnny and Daniel. After the run-in, though, with Terry Silver, Daniel LaRusso needs a drink. Him and Johnny head to the bar, and he fills Johnny in on the backstory between him and Terry Silver. When Daniel brings up Miguel and what's best for him, unaware of just how sensitive Johnny is to this, Johnny says, you think you're better than me because 30 years ago you won by 1 point of one lucky kick. Let's remember, I was Cobra Kai's #1 student, and if anyone knows how to beat them, it's going to be me. It suddenly starts an argument between the two, where at the end of it, they agree to fight again to settle the score. Best of 3. Whoever wins is going to take over the kids' training. The students find out about this because Johnny hopped on Twitter and tweeted about the fight. Most of the kids seem a little bit worried about it. Hawk, however, thinks it's a great idea. He thinks it's awesome. Sam, however, lets Amanda know, who ends up questioning Daniel on if he's really going to fight Johnny 30 years after their initial fight. Daniel says, no, of course not. We were drunk. I'm sure Johnny woke up today and is saying the same thing. But that's not the case at all. Johnny is in training mode. As much as you can train for a fight in 24 hours. Daniel, though, still doesn't think they're actually going to fight. He's in the middle of texting Johnny an apology when Sam walks through the door. Sam questions her dad on what he did to set Johnny off, and Daniel takes offense to it, saying, that's the thing, I didn't do anything. The littlest thing sets Johnny Lawrence off. I've tried to make this work, Sam. He's impossible. Sam disagrees, saying he's not impossible, he just has a different style. She then asks her dad if this has anything to do with the guy that showed up at the dojo with Kreese, and Daniel says, yes, he is the one who lured me into Cobra Kai. Daniel reassures her, though, that there won't be any fight, and Sam says, of course not. Miyagi-Do is all about avoiding conflict. And the attitude catches Daniel's ear, and he questions Sam on when all of a sudden that became an issue. And she tells him, when a psycho attacked me. Suddenly, Sam is starting to side with Johnny's way of thinking. For whatever reason, Daniel thinks this is a good time to bring up how Sam acted at the birthday party with Tori, and he tells her that's not how we act. But Sam lets him know that might not be how you act, but I can make my own decisions. Now, while he wasn't planning on fighting, Daniel and Johnny show up at the dojo ready to throw down, but they're not the only ones there. The students are all there, and they're all filming it. Johnny takes the first point. Daniel ends up taking the next 2. He's got game point. Johnny, however, ties it up with the next point winning. Problem is, no one knows who won because they knocked each other out at the same time. As all of the kids are checking the replay, Hawk shows up. But Hawk is missing his mohawk. He went to the tattoo parlor where the tattoo artist didn't show up, but the Cobra Kai kids did. And they didn't get into a fight. They simply shaved his mohawk off. Hawk is back to Eli. Johnny says aloud that if Kreese did this, then both him and Silver need to pay. And Daniel throws his arms up saying, he almost killed you last time. What, you want to fight them both now? The two different ideologies just cannot seem to coexist. Sam actually comes to the defense of Johnny, and Daniel can't believe it. He thinks Johnny's being a bad influence. And when he tells Johnny that, Johnny tells him, you don't have to worry about that anymore because we're done. And the marriage between Cobra Kai and Eagle Fang is over. In episode 6, the All Valley is changing. They're going to introduce a skills competition, and there's a separate girls category. This means there's going to be 2 All Valley champions, with the dojo who has the most points awarded as the winner. But for a dojo like Eagle Fang, this is an issue because they don't have any girls. It means they're going to have to scout for some. So that day, Johnny and Miguel head to the high school, looking to recruit, but just like when Johnny was trying to recruit for Cobra Kai, he fails. Comes off as downright creepy. Miguel sees Moon and asks if she wants to join, and Moon says, you know what would be really good for this? My ex, Piper. She's an athletic freak. So Johnny gets some pointers on how to talk to Piper, and he pitches Eagle Fang. And it seems to work. She's in. So it looks like Eagle Fang has their female champ. Over with Miyagi Do, because of these rule changes, most of the kids' attitudes have taken a turn for the worse. Other than Sam, none of them have confidence that they can actually succeed. It's got kids in both dojos questioning if the split was actually a good idea or not. Cobra Kai, though, is thrilled with the decision because they know that with Johnny and Daniel split up, neither of them have enough to actually compete. Kreese thinks they just won the tournament before it even began. Now, he has to make sure that they can't recruit. Now, the obvious choice for Cobra Kai being the girl champ is Tori. And as she's walking into the dojo, she gets approached by her aunt, who wants to know if her mom's disability check came in. Tori does not have a good relationship with this woman. She's pretty much a leech. And Tori's Aunt Candace tries to hold it over her that after her mom does pass away, she's all she's got. Tori, though, reminds her that in a year she's going to be 18, and she doesn't need her help. Not that she's really offering any. I mean, one look at this woman's parted bangs and you can tell she's in rough shape. But she tells Tori that she knows how to play the game. And if they go to family court, one judge is going to look at Tori, and with the rap sheet that she has, her brother Brandon is going to be taken away. Right? It's a scumbag. But Tori knows that she's right. Tori needs to bump up her resume, and that means going back to school. She goes and talks to the principal, and the principal has one condition. The LaRussos have to agree to it. So she does something she didn't want to do. She goes and asks the LaRussos for help. Amanda says, I just need you to promise me one thing. And Tori promises that she'll stay away from Sam, but that's not what Amanda was looking for. She tells Tori, I need you to talk to somebody. Get support. Tori agrees, as she tells Amanda, I need this. But Sam walks through the door, and when Sam sees Tori sitting at her kitchen table, she is not happy. Tori leaves, and Sam rips into her mom, saying, you wanted this girl in jail. Now she's sitting at our kitchen table, and you're inviting her back to school? Sam thinks it's complete hypocrisy after what happened between her dad and Johnny being enemies. And that goes into how Sam actually does want to train with Johnny. She wants to learn both styles. Sam is beyond frustrated. She feels like no one is listening to her. When she leaves the room, Daniel asks Amanda, why are you trying to help this girl? And that's when Amanda tells Daniel about how she got arrested one time. He always thought it was a high school prank, when in reality, she took a baseball bat to her tutor's car with her tutor in it, because she found out her tutor was sleeping with her dad. In a way, she says a little bit of herself and Tori. She tells Daniel, sometimes you need a wake-up call to change course. And Daniel thinks about it. He knows somebody that needs a wake-up call. It's Robbie. He goes to visit Robbie in the convenience store right by Cobra Kai, and Robbie doesn't want to hear it. He feels like he's heard this spiel before about coming back, being his male champion. He doesn't want to be used anymore. But Daniel's here to give him another speech, and it's about Terry Silver. He tells Robbie how Silver wormed his way into his life, and he will think he becomes stronger than he ever thought possible. But Silver won't stop because he's sick and twisted. As Daniel is telling Robbie this, Terry Silver is standing right behind him. He interrupts the conversation, telling Robbie he should go check out the new equipment in the dojo, and calmly tells Daniel it's unethical to poach other people's students. Daniel shoots back, you're not a sensei. You just manipulate people to turn them into something they're not. But Silver disputes that, saying, I didn't turn you into anything that wasn't already inside you. You were a hothead. All I had to do was wind you up and get out of the way. And if you're being honest with yourself, you know you liked it. You just never wanted to admit there's always been a little Cobra Kai in you. As Daniel was talking to an old friend, kind of. I mean, I'll consider Terry an old friend. Sam was so frustrated she needed to go visit her oldest friend, Aisha. This is the first time they've seen each other in a while. They start getting caught up. Aisha moved because, well, one, her parents were pissed about the fight at school, but also because her dad got a new job. Sam then gets into why she really showed up. She needs somebody to talk to about this Tori situation. Aisha tells her about what's going on in her new school, about how there was a girl that normally she feels like would have picked on her, but she struck first, just like Johnny taught her. She walked up to this girl and introduced herself, and now they're great friends. The lesson here is attack your problems head on. So Sam does that. When Tori returns to school, Tori walks up to her. She's about to actually thank Sam for letting her back in when Sam cuts her off. She tells Tori, "I'm not scared of you. You're not in control here. I am. My parents might fall for your crap, but if you so much as look at me funny, I will kick your ass for a third time. I'm coming for you, bitch." So much hostility. But while Sam was doing what Johnny told her in the strike first, Johnny had an issue because Piper never showed up for practice. Miguel goes to DM her on Instagram to find out what's going on, only to see that Piper has joined Cobra Kai, thanks to Cobra Kai sending all the girls swag boxes. Now it's back to the drawing board. They need a female champ. But Bert actually has somebody in mind. There's a girl on the debate team, and she is feisty. And Johnny comes to one of her debates and agrees she would be perfect. But over with Miyagi-Do, one person has been noticeably absent from practice, and that is Hawk. Hawk's no more. He's back to being Eli. Dimitri goes to check on his oldest friend, and Eli says he's done with karate. Dimitri spends all day trying to convince Eli to come back. He finally gets through to him by telling him, "A mohawk did not define you, Eli. Call yourself whatever you want, but at the end of the day, you're still my best friend." And the next day, Eli returns to Miyagi-Do. In episode 7, Cobra Kai is warming up for the lesson that day, and Robbie and Kenny are warming up together. Kenny had quite a day. Anthony stole his clothes during gym class because Kenny took it to him on the basketball court, and Anthony's D-bag friends were giving him crap for it. So in order to get retribution, he stole his clothes and everybody made fun of him again. But Terry Silver walks in and starts telling the kids that at the tournament, they're going to have to identify their opponent's weaknesses. Tori says, "Sensei Kreese doesn't have a weakness." But Terry says, "Of course he does. We all have a weakness." And Kreese takes a little bit of an exception to that. They break up the class, and Kreese turns to Silver and says, "Let's make this interesting. You pick a fighter, and I pick a fighter. Whoever has the most wins ends up getting a six-pack." But Kreese is dominating this competition. In fact, he has shut Terry Silver out. So Silver says, "Let's do double or nothing." And Kreese agrees, and he picks Robbie. Silver ends up picking Kenny. Kenny's getting beat up a little bit, and Silver pulls him aside and says, "You need to look for the weakness." But Kenny says, "Robbie doesn't have one." And Silver reminds him, everybody has one. And that's when Kenny realizes Robbie does in fact have a weakness. Robbie's weakness is the fact that he's fighting Kenny. Anytime he hits Kenny a little bit hard, Robbie checks on him. So when Robbie hits Kenny, he kind of fakes a little bit of an injury, and then he sweeps him. He ends up winning. But here's the weird thing. They went double or nothing. And since Silver was losing, that should mean that he gets nothing. Yet somehow, he ended up getting a six-pack of beer in a weird turn of events. I don't think the show creators realize what double or nothing means. Anyway, Kreese is going to have to buy Silver some alcoholic beverages. And he buys him a Vietnam six-pack, one that they used to enjoy back in their war days. But Kreese starts reminiscing about their days in Vietnam. In particular, a soldier who took it upon himself to lead one day, and that ended up costing him his life. When Silver tells Kreese he doesn't want to talk about that, Kreese yells, "Quiet! I'm not done speaking, Lieutenant. The other day, when we were teaching, you told the students I have a weakness. So, what is it? What's my weakness?" Terry tries to de-escalate the situation, saying it was just a lesson for the class, but Kreese feels like Terry is scared to tell him. He then, for probably what's the billionth time, reminds Terry that he saved his life in Vietnam and he should be grateful. He tells him, "I've always looked out for you, but you need to fall back in line. You need to follow my lead." After this conversation, Kreese has Terry completely shook. Now, Kreese's old student, Johnny, is planning on telling Miguel that night that him and his mom are dating. They end up sitting Miguel down and awkwardly explaining it, and he's fine with it. They then head to practice where the new girl, Devin Lee, shows up. They then start practicing, but Johnny doesn't let Miguel practice at all because tournament's coming up and he can't risk him getting injured. Miguel really wants to practice, and he has to sit back and watch his friends get beat up. And at the end of practice, his friends aren't happy with him because they feel like he's the teacher's pet. It probably didn't help matters that they overheard Johnny tell Miguel that Carmen wanted to have a family dinner that night. And it was a family dinner that Miguel was late for. Carmen starts to try to discipline Miguel. Johnny awkwardly steps in, and finally Miguel cuts both of them off and says, at first I was cool with this, but now it's just weird. I'm over this. And Johnny's just struggling with this role because he remembers what it was like to be a stepchild. He never got along with his stepdad. So the next day, he ends up convincing Miguel to skip his last class and come hang out with him. And he explains that he's struggling a little bit with this. He doesn't really know what to do. You ask him about karate or the 80s, he's an expert, but dating somebody's mom, he's clueless. He explains the situation with his own father, about how Johnny's dad left when he was in kindergarten. Miguel asks him, did you ever try and go and find him? Maybe you could ask why he left? Hear his side of the story? But Johnny doesn't want to do that, and he doesn't even know where to begin looking for him. He admits to Miguel that he's still too afraid to find out the truth anyway. He looks at Miguel and says, I didn't have a male role model to grow up until I met Kreese, and you know how that went. And I screwed up with Robbie, and I don't want to make that same mistake again. They agree, though, that some things need to stay the same, i.e. Johnny being Miguel's sensei. Johnny says, okay, we need to work on the flying tornado, one of the most badass kicks in all of karate. But before they start, Sam walks to the door, because she's ready to learn both styles. But Sam's brother, Anthony, well, he doesn't know any karate, even though his friends think he does. And when Daniel ends up catching him with some Cobra Kai stuff, he asks, what the hell's this? Anthony lies to him, telling him that there's a kid in school who's bullying him, and he's a part of Cobra Kai. So Daniel now wants to teach Anthony some karate to defend himself. First lesson for Anthony? Cleaning the bird crap off of the cars. However, when Daniel returns a couple hours later, the cars are clean, but he finds out that Anthony had hired a guy to do it. Anthony just didn't really seem into it, so he took a shortcut. Daniel is pissed, and when he brings up Mr. Miyagi, Anthony cuts him off and says, I'm so sick of hearing about Mr. Miyagi. I didn't know the guy. Daniel shakes his head and says, I thought you were mature enough to appreciate all this, but I guess I was wrong. That night, though, Daniel ends up catching Anthony snooping around the dojo looking at some of the Miyagi stuff. And Anthony tells him that everybody has these awesome Mr. Miyagi stories, including Sam. He doesn't. So Daniel ends up telling him one. That when Anthony was a baby, he actually kicked Mr. Miyagi right in the face. It was the only kick that Daniel had ever seen anyone land on Mr. Miyagi. And at that moment, Mr. Miyagi said that Anthony was going to be a handful, but he was also going to lead the family one day. Daniel then brings up the bully, and Anthony kind of scoffs at it and says, don't worry, I'll handle it. The next day, Anthony heads to school, and he starts talking to Leah. They used to be friends back in the day, and Anthony has a huge crush on her, but lately, they haven't really hung out a lot. Leah brings up going to a local fair because there's a bunch of people invited, and Anthony seems thrilled till he finds out that Kenny's going, and Kenny was telling Leah about one of the rides there. His friends overhear this, they start giving him crap, so Anthony walks up to Kenny saying that maybe they should start over and become friends, but Kenny, feeling that Cobra Kai confidence, ends up telling him he's got nothing to say to him, and then insulting him. He continues to insult him until Anthony starts chasing him, and Kenny ends up running into the library. He divides and conquers, kicking the crap out of all of Anthony's friends until finally Anthony's the only one that's left, and Anthony is only saved when a teacher walks in and catches them. The principal then has to call parents. The LaRussos come in, and they think that Anthony is an innocent victim in all of this. And they are shocked to learn that it's actually Anthony who's the bully. So Anthony is in big trouble. In episode 8, the conversation with Kreese is still bothering Terry. Before practice, he tells Terry, I just want to let you know, I haven't forgotten what you did for me, and I'll do anything to prove my loyalty to you. But Kreese just looks at him, nods, and says, just go to work, sensei. The kids, however, are out on the mats warming up, and most of the conversation has to do with the upcoming junior prom. Robbie and Tori pair up, and they're talking about how to get their opponents off balance. One of the ways to do that would be to go to prom together. That would really throw them for a loop. Silver overhears this and says, I think it's a great idea, but if you guys go, you're going in style. The door then opens up, and a familiar face is returned. It's Stingray. He's done with house arrest, and he can't wait to rejoin the dojo. He says hello to a couple of the kids there, but one person who is not thrilled to see him is John Kreese. Kreese insults him, telling him he was never a part of the team, and then kicks him out. The kids then practice and get ready for junior prom, and that includes over at the LaRusso household, where Anthony is grounded. Daniel and Amanda don't even want him in the pictures with Sam and Miguel. And speaking of Miguel, he shows up along with Carmen, and along with Johnny, which makes for a little bit of an awkward interaction between Johnny and Daniel. But Johnny gets in the photos, and then they have one big group photo. Johnny and Carmen then head home and let Miguel head off and have some fun. But when Johnny and Carmen get back to the apartment complex, Shannon walks up to Johnny. She's out, she's clean, she's doing well, but she tells him how Terry Silver came by her apartment and gave Robbie a car to take to prom. He also gave Shannon a wad of cash to make sure Robbie was, quote, taken care of, and offered to hook up Shannon with a job. Normally, this would be nice, but because it's Terry Silver, it comes across as weird. She tells Johnny how she tried to talk to Robbie about it, but Terry Silver clearly has his hooks in him. So since this is a Cobra Kai matter, she wants Johnny to handle it, and he tells her, I will. So Johnny heads over to Cobra Kai. He has to break in, however, and no one's there. Just because nobody's there doesn't mean nobody's watching. Terry Silver has hooked up a bunch of security camera footage, and he knows that Johnny's there, so he gives the dojo a call, and Johnny picks up. Johnny tells Terry to stay away from Robbie. Terry tells Johnny that he's going to take care of him. But when Johnny threatens Terry, Terry gives him an address. He then calls John Kreese up and gives him the same address, and that address is to the original location of Cobra Kai. Terry and Kreese end up arriving first, and he first starts reminiscing about the good old days, but Terry tells him that this will be the new location for the head of Cobra Kai. They're going back to their roots, but this isn't the only one. Terry's got big plans. He's scouting other locations to franchise the Cobra Kai brand, which is something that John Kreese hadn't even discussed with him. Terry then tells Kreese, I have one more surprise for you. And when Johnny walks through the door, Terry ambushes him. With Johnny laying on the ground, Terry tells him that's what you get for betraying your sensei. But his sensei, John Kreese, can't believe that he actually convinced Johnny to show up. Even Kreese thinks he went over the line. Terry, however, tells Kreese, I had to prove my loyalty to you. You wanted to get back at him? Well, here's your chance. I mean, think about it. The only way this loser has a chance of winning the tournament is with the Diaz kid. And what's he going to feel like when he sees his sensei got his ass beat? It's going to throw him off his game. Johnny, however, gets up, and we have an old man fight. But during this old man fight, it becomes clear that Terry Silver is slowly going off the deep end. By the way, he ends up winning that old man fight. After he disposes of Johnny, Kreese tells him, we agreed to settle this at the tournament. Terry questions him, saying, what happened to No Mercy? But Kreese says, I thought you knew better than to question me. They then leave, and Johnny eventually heads home and gets drunk. Back at the LaRussos, Louis pitches both Daniel and Amanda on letting his sister Vanessa talk to him about what's going on with Anthony. She's in her second year of grad school for child psychology, but she comes across a little ditzy. Louis, however, is able to prove to them that she knows what she's talking about when she comes in and drops a little bit of a diagnosis but uses a lot of big words that I certainly don't know the meaning to. And that's when they decide, yeah, okay, she might be qualified. They give her the okay to talk to Anthony, but she doesn't want to talk to Anthony. She wants to talk to them. And when she sits them down, they don't like what they hear. She doesn't all out blame them, but she does point to a couple of things that make them realize they're implicit in this. Later in the night, when Daniel goes to check on Anthony and they're talking, it seems like everything's going okay. But then as Daniel's leaving his room, he hears a ping. And he realizes that even though they told Anthony no more devices, he clearly didn't listen. Daniel ends up finding what looks like an iPad and breaks it in half, and Anthony can't believe it. But Daniel commands the room. It kind of forces Anthony to listen. So Anthony's not having the best night, and unfortunately, neither is Eli. He's going solo at the junior prom, feeling like a complete loser. He still really has a crush on Moon, but without the mohawk, he's lost his confidence. He doesn't even talk to her. Miguel and Sam are having a nice enough time until they see Tori and Robbie enter the room together. And Tori and Robbie kind of steal the show. I mean, these two are living rent-free in the heads of Miguel and Sam. After the junior prom, all of the kids go and drink back at Stingray's place, which is bizarre, and trust me, Stingray's neighbor agrees. He actually tries to break up the party, but he throws one too many insults at Stingray, and Stingray has to show him his Stingray. He kicks him in the balls, then he roundhouse kicks him in the face, and then he sends him on his way, and the party continues. But while this party looks big, it's really not, and Tori and Sam couldn't avoid each other forever. Sam starts insulting Tori, and Tori tells her, I would kick your ass, but I promised your mom that I wouldn't. The insults get traded back and forth, and then Sam does something that she's not supposed to under the Miyagi-Do flag. She strikes first. It forces an all-out brawl between Tori and Sam, and Miguel tries to step in, wondering what the hell she's doing, but he ends up getting mixed up in it. Then Robbie jumps in. At one point in the fight, Sam grabs Robbie and says, you think I broke your heart? Well, you broke mine too. And Miguel definitely heard that. It's awkward, But everybody eventually just ends up in the pool. Sam, though, demands to go home. After dropping off Sam, Miguel heads home, and he needs to talk to somebody about what went down, so he goes to Johnny's, but Johnny is completely drunk. Miguel ends up taking him to bed, and Johnny starts telling him how he tries to be there for him, but he just sucks at it. Miguel tells him, "You're doing just fine. I love you." And Johnny starts crying, and he says, "I love you too, Robbie." As if Miguel's night couldn't get any worse. And speaking of Robbie, he and Tori end up hooking up, and it looks like it goes further than first base. So I guess Terry Silver was right. They did go to junior prom in style, and they also ended it in style. The next morning, there has been a wake-up call in the LaRusso household. Anthony, for the first time in his life, actually takes out the trash, which is shocking to his parents. He tells his dad that he's heard him loud and clear, and he wants to help out with the dealership and maybe go to the dojo once in a while. And Daniel's all for that. But over at the rival dojo, Terry Silver has fully gone off the deep end. He's drunk on those Vietnam beers when Stingray walks in. He thinks John Kreese made a mistake. There's no way that Cobra Kai could be Cobra Kai without Stingray. After all, he did defend the dojo in the school brawl. Stingray wants to plead his case to Terry Silver about why he should join the dojo. So Terry Silver says, "Okay, if you want to be Cobra Kai, I'll make you Cobra Kai." And he starts beating the ever-loving crap out of him. Terry Silver is back to torturing teenagers. Well, actually, Stingray is a grown adult. But still, it's bizarre behavior nonetheless. In Episode 9, it is finally the day that we've all been waiting for, the All-Valley Tournament. Daniel gives the Miyagi-Do kids a pep talk. Johnny gives his kids a pep talk. And John Kreese seems to give Cobra Kai kids a pep talk, but Terry Silver corrects him and says, "That's not a pep talk, that's an order." Before the tournament starts, Johnny pulls Miguel aside and says, "Hey man, I know what's going on with you. Things with your girlfriend are a little weird right now, but she's not on your team. So I need you to get your head in the game. You'll make up with her later, but right now, you need to be focused on winning." Miguel, however, seems a little turned off by the conversation. The tournament starts off with the skills competition, and after the first round, Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang are 1-2. Cobra Kai is in 5th. However, after the second round of skills competition, it's a completely different ballgame. Both Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang kids came up a little bit short, while Cobra Kai kids came to play. Cobra Kai is now in first place, Miyagi-Do is in second, and Eagle Fang is in 6th. The Miyagi-Do kids especially are a little bit down. They really thought they had the skills competition in the bag, and Eli blames himself because he couldn't break a board on a kick. Daniel, though, has to remind them that this thing is far from over. Johnny, however, is not taking things as well. I mean, you can't blame him. He is in 6th place. He asks Devin what they need to be Cobra Kai, and she tells him they just need to get as deep in the tournament as possible. In between the skills competition and the actual fighting, you get an impromptu concert from country award-winning recording artist Carrie Underwood. Because it's not enough that she ruined Sunday Night Football, now she needs to ruin this television show. If you can't tell, I'm not a country music fan. If you are, smash that thumbs down button. They then kick off the actual karate part of this, and Cobra Kai continues to dominate. Sam realizes the reason why. It's because they know the Miyagi-Do playbook. After the play-in, the only kids that are left are Miguel, Dimitri, Robbie, Eli, Kenny, Kyler, Devin, Sam, Tori, and Piper. So basically all of the main characters. I guess I could have said that. Miguel ends up winning his quarterfinal fight with ease, as does Tori. She defeats Devin, and now there's no hope for Eagle Fang to have a female champion. Devin does say, though, that she's only been doing this for about 6 weeks, so next year she's going to kick all of their asses. But with Devin out, they really do need Miguel at this point. They need him to win the whole thing for them to have a shot at winning the tournament. Before Robbie has his quarterfinal fight, Daniel walks up to him, questioning him on the sportsmanship of giving Cobra Kai kids the Miyagi-Do playbook. And Robbie reminds him, "I'm here to win." He says to Daniel, "Everybody thinks that their way is the only way. You, my dad, Kreese. Truth is, it doesn't matter which way you fight, as long as it works. And I'll use whatever it takes to win." Daniel then gives Robbie one last Miyagi-Do lesson. Never put passion in front of principle, because even when you win, you end up losing. Robbie, though, doesn't end up losing. He ends up winning his quarterfinal fight. So does Dimitri. He advances as well. But Eli's quarterfinal fight is with his former bully, Kyler. And without the mohawk, Kyler's back to calling Eli Lip. And Eli is back to being that quiet introvert. But Moon overhears the conversation, walks up to him and says, "He's always been a bully. That's not who you are. You're not defined by your haircut. I liked you for your energy and your confidence." Eli, though, admits that lately he doesn't have any confidence. so Moon decides to give him some. She ends up kissing him right before he goes on the mat, and Hawk is back. And he takes all that pent-out frustration out on Kyler and whoops his ass. The next fight is between Sam and Piper, and Piper takes the first point. And after she does, she tells Sam, Robbie says that Miyagi-Do is for defense only. Without your defense, you've got nothing. So Sam gives her a little Cobra Kai. She strikes first, catching Piper off guard and taking the next point. Then she takes the second and the third. And when she returns to her side, Daniel is not happy that she used Eagle Fang / Cobra Kai's tactics. He tells her, you didn't win the right way. And she says, maybe my right way is different than yours. That's now the second person to tell Daniel that maybe his way isn't the only way or the right way. The semifinals then kick off, and it's Cobra Kai versus Cobra Kai. Robbie is matched up against his mentee, Kenny. Kenny, though, takes the first point, to the shock of everybody. Kreese then pulls Robbie aside and says, I thought you wanted to be a champion. Are you fighting your friend or your opponent? Then he sends him back out. When Robbie heads back to the mat, he's got a different look about him. He takes the next point, and then the second point, and he takes the third point in epic style, kicking Kenny extremely hard in the face, possibly breaking the kid's nose. Even Robbie's shocked at his violence. Miguel's quarterfinal matchup is also going to be against a friend. He's fighting Eli. Before the match, Daniel walks over to him and starts telling him how well he's been doing and how he noticed that in his last match, he was circling his opponent, which is a Miyagi-Do tactic. Johnny, however, comes over, interrupts the conversation, and tells Miguel to go get ready. Daniel then confronts Johnny about training Sam. And Johnny tells Daniel, you should thank me. She got to the semifinals. Daniel, though, feels like Johnny turned her into somebody who can't control her anger. And Johnny feels like Daniel is turning his kids into a bunch of wimps. Daniel tells Johnny to stay away from Sam. Johnny tells Daniel to stay away from Miguel. And after all that drama, it's actually time to fight. But Johnny is definitely feeling the pressure of only having one fighter left in the tournament. He says to Miguel, you take his ass out. And Miguel is a little appalled because Eli's his friend. But Johnny says he picked a side. He picked Miyagi-Do. Whose side are you on? Miguel says he's on Johnny's side, but he definitely doesn't agree with his coach. Hawk and Miguel start going at it, but when Miguel jumps up to kick Hawk in the face, he ends up re-injuring his back, falling to the mat and screaming in agony. But in the season finale, you learn that it's just a muscle pull, and per tournament rules, Miguel has 30 minutes to get out on the mat and continue. While everybody's waiting to see if Miguel can continue, Robbie and Dimitri fight it out, and Dimitri loses, but all things considered, he actually performed pretty well. Robbie then heads into the bathroom where he sees Kenny beating the crap out of Anthony LaRusso. Anthony walked in just to apologize to Kenny for how he treated him, but Kenny went straight bully on him. Robbie has to pull Kenny off of him, and he asks him, what are you doing? Kenny tells him he's getting payback on his bully, and Robbie is shocked to learn that it was Anthony who was the one that was the bully. But Kenny assures him he's not my bully anymore. He then gets down next to Anthony's face and says, next year, we're in high school. Get ready, because you're going to be in a world of pain. You see, Kenny's last name is Payne, so that was a given. His name used to be ironic, but now that he knows karate, it fits, and he's using it perfectly. Robbie, though, is disgusted in Kenny's behavior and tells him, this isn't how I trained you. But Kenny reminds him, this is Cobra Kai. No mercy. Back out on the mat, Tori advances to the finals, as does Sam. But before we can have the finals, we need to figure out what's going on with Miguel. Johnny walks in the back to check on him when Kreese cuts him off. He tells Johnny, I had no idea what Terry was doing back in the old dojo, and Johnny tries to walk away from him. It didn't have to be like this. It could have been with me and your real son. Johnny turns around and says, you don't care about Robbie any more than you cared about me. But Kreese rejects that notion, saying, I cared the most about you. Johnny tells him, you have a funny way of showing it. You had me fight dirty, also Cobra Kai could be number one. But Kreese says that's not the case. You were down 2-0. I knew that if you lost, you were going to go down a downward spiral, which, by the way, you did. I wanted to win for you. When Kreese brings up that maybe one day Robbie could keep the Cobra Kai name going, Johnny tells him that's not going to happen because tonight Cobra Kai is going to die. He then walks in to check on Miguel, who's got maybe 5 minutes remaining on the clock. Miguel, however, has doubts that he can continue. Johnny starts giving him a pep talk about being a champion, fighting through adversity. But he ends it by saying, we're going to show Cobra Kai and LaRusso who's best. And Miguel realizes that's what this is all about. Johnny tries to remind him that if they lose, he can't be Miguel's sensei anymore. But after how the day is gone, Miguel doesn't even care. When the clock strikes 0, Miguel is not out on the mat. That means Eli and Robbie are going to be fighting in the finals. Miguel's actually headed home, but as he's walking at the door, he runs into Sam. He told her that it just felt like he wasn't fighting for himself anymore. Sam completely commiserates because she gets it from her dad all the time, and Miguel reminds her, Johnny's not my dad. He then wishes Sam luck, orders an Uber, and heads home. Eli and Robbie end up fighting first. If Robbie wins, Cobra Kai clinches the championship. Robbie takes the first point, and when Eli goes back to his corner, he tells Daniel, I don't know what to do. He trained at Miyagi-Do a lot longer than I have, and he knows all of my moves. That's when Daniel flips the script. He reminds Eli that he was at Cobra Kai longer than Robbie's been. He tells Eli, put him on defense. Eli ends up getting the next point, and after 3 minutes, these guys are still tied, which means we're going into sudden death. Terry Silver, though, is not happy with Robbie's performance. He feels like the fight should be over by now. And Robbie is sick of Terry's crap and says, do you want to go fight him? Terry goes to step to Robbie, but Kreese gets in the middle and says, you're angry. Good, use it. On the other side of the mat, exact opposite. Daniel is thrilled. And when it comes time for advice, he looks at Sam, looks at Johnny, and says, give him all you got. And he does. Eli Moskowitz ends up winning the All Valley tournament. He also keeps the hopes of Cobra Kai not winning alive. Now it's just up to Sam. She's got to fight Tori. But as Tori is heading out to the mat, she runs into Amanda. Amanda tells Tori that she spoke to her therapist, and her therapist confirms that Tori is going to the meetings, just like they agreed upon. Tori then thanks Amanda because Amanda helped find a volunteer to help out with her mom. And that's when Amanda says, you can repay me now. I'm not asking you to back down, but just play by the rules. As those two were having an awkward conversation in the back, out on the mats, Daniel was also having an awkward conversation with Johnny. He's finally come to the realization that his way isn't the only way, and it's not the right way. He needs Johnny's help. Johnny agrees to help out, and now they're back to being Miyagi Fang. Tori and Sam then get on the mat for the finals. Sam takes the first point, thanks to the flying tornado kick that Johnny taught her. Tori ties it up at 1, though, a few seconds later. Sam looks like she takes a 2-1 lead, but the referee decides that it was out of bounds. Tori then takes the next point, and now it's match point. Sam runs over to her corner to get some advice, and Daniel and Johnny tell her, use your instincts. She does. She ties it up at 2, although that really should have won it for her if the referee hadn't called the last one out of bounds. Now both girls have 2 points, and during the fight, Tori accidentally elbows Sam in the face. It looks really bad. It also looks like Cobra Kai is back to their tactics, even though Tori didn't mean to do it. She actually apologized to Sam. They give Sam a little bit of time to get back to her bearings, and when Tori goes over into her corner, Terry Silver tells her to do it again. This is within earshot of all of the Cobra Kai kids. Terry promises her that this referee is not going to end it on a technicality. The worst she'll get is a warning. If given the opportunity, Tori is to elbow her in the face again. Tori, though, doesn't want to do that. She wants to win fairly, and she feels like she doesn't need to do those things to win. John Kreese, though, steps in, telling her, we've come this far, but this is your fight now. So whatever happens is up to you. Tori then goes out there and gets the winning point. She has won the championship, not just for herself, but for her dojo. Johnny and Daniel can no longer teach karate in the valley. As Cobra Kai is celebrating the victory, Terry Silver grabs the microphone. He says to the audience how proud he is of the kids on the stage, but he also says how proud he is to announce that they're going to be franchising Cobra Kais all over the valley. It's as if John Kreese has no say in it. Kyler is planning on having a victory party at his place, and Tori's planning on going, but she has to grab her bag from the locker room. When she heads in, though, she sees Terry Silver paying off the ref. Tori suddenly realizes she didn't actually win fairly, and she no longer feels like going to a party. After the tournament, Johnny headed to Cobra Kai. He was looking for Robbie, but what he finds is a completely empty dojo with a Ford lease sign on the outside of it. Luckily for Johnny, Robbie followed him there. Robbie tells him that they're moving to a new location, which is actually the old location. Johnny can tell that Robbie's not in a great mood. He thinks it's about the match, but Robbie tells him it's not. It's about this kid, Kenny. I was trying to help him, take him under my wing. But when I saw him today, it's like looking in a mirror. At this point, Robbie starts crying. He says to Johnny, I realized I screwed everything up because I had all this hate inside of me. For you and for Miguel. And I thought I could use Cobra Kai to control that. But it just made things worse, and it's never going to get better. Johnny corrects him, telling him he had a great thing going with LaRusso, and he got in the way of it. So Robbie should not blame himself. If anybody, he should be blaming Johnny. Johnny gives Robbie a big hug and tells him it's going to be all right. When he heads back to the apartment, he goes to check on his other son, Miguel, but Miguel's not there. Miguel headed home in that Uber, And then he wrote his mom a letter. Miguel needed to find out who his real dad is. So without his mom or his grandmother knowing, he hopped on a Greyhound bus to Mexico City to track him down, find out where his roots are. Carmen is worried sick because, as she tells Johnny, Miguel's dad has no idea Miguel exists. And on top of it, Miguel's dad is not the best guy. So Johnny reassures Carmen, I'm going to take care of this, don't worry. That night, as the Cobra Kai kids party it up, but their senseis are just sharing a drink, reveling in the victory. After some laughs, Silver tells Kreese, thought about what you said about your weakness, and I realized what it is. It's Johnny Lawrence. That's what this was all about. It was never about us teaming up, and I fell for that. And you know why? Because you're my weakness. The cops then show up, and Silver tells Kreese, I'm now shedding my weakness. And the cops arrest John Kreese for aggravated assault and attempted murder. Because Stingray was so desperate to get into Cobra Kai that he was willing to let Terry Silver beat the ever-loving crap out of him. Silver told Stingray that when the cops come calling asking who did it, he is to tell them that it was John Kreese. If he does that, he's back in. So John Kreese is put behind bars. The next day, Daniel is trying to shake the loss. He heads to the gravesite of Mr. Miyagi, asking for advice and guidance. He knows he made a bet, but he doesn't want to honor it because the men that he made the bet with aren't honorable. Daniel realizes he needs help, but he can't just ask somebody from the grave. He needs to ask somebody who can actually help him in that moment. And the person he asks to help him out is Chosen. He has Chosen to help him put an end to Cobra Kai. And that is the end of Season 4 of Cobra Kai. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. Consider subscribing to the channel. Thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. If I do not get back to you in the comments section, don't take it personal. I'm like Eli without the mohawk. Nasty comments make me feel bad, and I kind of shrivel up into a ball and cry. You know what would make me feel better, though? Merch. If you bought some, because I have some, go buy a t-shirt or something. I got bills to pay. But just know, I really do appreciate everybody checking this out.